Welcome to another Indie Dev Showcase, highlighting the many indie games we play here on the channel. If you'd like to submit a game for a future video, please reach out. But otherwise, let's begin. We are starting things off with the Zombie Rollerz Pinball Heroes. This was a game we checked out back in 2022, and it's kind of like, I guess, Plants vs. Zombies, but replace the plants and tower defense with pinball. It is up to us to defend the realm from invading zombies by using the power of pinball to stop them. The game itself is kind of played like a quasi-roguelike. You'll choose a different hero which affects kind of like your abilities and powers, and then you'll go from one pinball environment to the next, trying to clear all the objectives, gain upgrades and resources, and power up your character for more pinball action and dealing with some of the game's variety of bosses. In terms of the pinball physics, it's definitely going for more of the arcade style of pinball, and it's a very interesting idea. I think ultimately for me, I just did get a little bit tired of the general pinball action. It is very much one of those games where each kind of level is going to be the same kind of basic structure of you trying to deal with enough of these zombies to end the wave. The kind of persistent or overworld design is quite interesting. Each day you'll be able to move a certain number of places and collect different resources while the world kind of corrupts behind you. And your challenge is to kind of keep ahead of the corruption and keep making progress through it. So I would say if you're looking for kind of more on the, I would say, casual or moderate side of a pinball style game, this could be a fun one to pick up. We now have Elemental Roll. This is kind of a combination of Super Monkey Ball style physics with that of a 3D platformer. Now the footage you're seeing is taken from kind of a very early demo build and may not represent the current version or the current demo that is available. You play as the King of Hell, who has been banished and now trapped inside an orb. And in order to reclaim your kingdom, you're going to have to explore the strange world, complete a myriad of challenges, mini-games, and find collectibles, and do your best job of trying to keep on ramps and tracks and stuff like that. So the game itself is built entirely on kind of the physics-driven or the physics model of your ball. As you're able to use things such as a kind of a speed boost, you'll unlock additional abilities and powers, and you're going to have to use this to get to each one of the kind of mini games or challenges and collect the objects you need to progress and unlock more areas. From the demo, this seemed like this could be an enjoyable game. Now, the developer does promise that you can get through this without needing too many of the upgrades, and there's definitely going to be some fun elements for people who like to speedrun or try to figure out sequence breaks, given the nature of the physics of it. While the demo didn't really give us kind of like the full breadth of the mechanics or unlocks, this could certainly be a fun game to keep an eye on for when it rolls onto our screens, I believe either in 2023 or 2024. Now up is BIOTA or B.I.O.T.A. This is a kind of modern retro-ish Metroidvania, which is not easy to say, built on the aesthetics of the Game Boy. You play as a team of mercenaries who have come to a plan to figure out what has gone wrong, why there's all kinds of bugs and things trying to kill everyone, and of course save the day. The structure of this one follows in line with other Metroidvanias, as you'll need to explore the areas, look for items and power-ups which will unlock future areas, and make your way through each one fighting bosses, enemies, and so on. And from a basic standpoint, I thought BIOTA was okay. There are numerous checkpoints, but the game does feature lots of one-hit kills, including death pits, traps, and so on. The main issue that I had with it was that the jumping, specifically jumping onto walls and kind of like hanging on walls or wall jumping, felt a little weird. Like, I felt like I didn't have complete control over it as I needed to, which made the game's first true boss fight far more frustrating than I think it needed to be. Now, the game does promote that there is additional like mini games and arcade modes and stuff like that. And I would say this is a decent Metroidvania. I don't know if anything's been done to it in terms of improving the controls or just the general feel of movement. But if you are looking for another kind of Metroidvania game, and more specifically you don't mind kind of the Game Boy 8-bit style of aesthetic, I would at least give this one a check and see if you'll enjoy it. So with that said, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have the back half of our video. If you're interested in my thoughts on design, then be sure to check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 Essential Games to Study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. Now up is Uragun, and as the name implies, you are a, well, gun, or mech in this case. When your human pilot has gone missing in a world where everything is trying to kill you, you're going to wage a one mech AI rampage to figure out what is going on. The game itself is kind of set up in roguelite form, as you'll go through each area trying to collect resources and unlock new weapons, upgrade your mech, and so on. Now, from what we played of this one, the footage you're seeing is kind of taken, I think, pretty early. I think this was like a demo we played about a year ago, and I found this game to be, I guess, serviceable. We played through kind of a few runs of it, or kind of a few stages, and it didn't really do anything I would say is like over the top in terms of the design, but it felt pretty solid in terms of the combination of your weapons, different powers, and dealing with the different kinds of enemies. Now, if you're looking for another kind of shooter roguelike or action roguelike, I would give this one a check. But if you've missed some of like the greater or more standout examples of the genre, like a Hades or a Curse of the Mad Gods, that kind of thing, I would probably recommend them over Uragun. But if you are looking for some shooter-like rogues, then I'd at least give this one a check and see if you'll enjoy it. We now turn to Kaiju Wars. This is essentially what if we combine Into the Breach versus Godzilla. Our story is that alien forces are sending giant monsters to attack our city, and as apparently the mayor, it is up to us to guide all military and evacuation plans to stop these monsters from completing their jobs. So the challenge here is that this is not quite in the same vein as other tactical strategy games, Advanced Wars, Wargroove, that kind of thing. How this works is that each battle you're going to be dealing with a giant monster. Each monster has their own kind of unique special abilities and talents, but their intelligence is quite limited. They're going to charge towards the nearest thing that they can wreck, and anything that they run into that can attack them will counter. Now, the kind of main element here is that when you do damage, or you do enough damage to the kaiju, you'll lower their movement ability. And if you play on the higher difficulties, they'll have more health between each phases. So the game definitely rewards a very aggressive opening act, because if you let them get too far ahead, you may not be able to build enough units in time to stop them. In later missions, you will have to deal with kind of randomly chosen cards that can mess with your ability, kind of like the Dark events from XCOM 2. You'll be able to gain access to new units, as well as a kind of persistent element. By completing objectives and missions, you'll get medals, which you can use to unlock quote-unquote veteran versions of a unit. This is just basically like a more powerful unit that you can put out onto the field. And I would honestly recommend that if you want to play this game all the way, go through it on normal first, get those medals and unlocks, and then go back for the harder version, because the stat increases definitely add up to some pain for you. And all in all, the game keeps growing with more content, kind of like that, B-movie charm of live action cutscenes and things along those lines. I think my only real complaint with this one is that, much like Into the Breach, it's one of those games where you really have to be in the mood to play it. It's not as, I think, pick up and play as some of the other games we've looked at, but if you're looking for a very entertaining and challenging strategy game, and you like giant monsters, then this is definitely one to pick up. And for our final game of our showcase, this is Battle Bands. Please keep in mind that what you're seeing is taken from early access and may not represent the current version of it. This is a quite interesting game. I guess the simplest way to describe this would be Slay the Rock Band. This is a deck-building cooperative roguelike, where you and up to 3 friends will form a band and will have to travel around the city doing shows and getting into rock battles, with all manner of strange bands and animals, apparently, who also know how to rock out. So the kind of element here is that each band member is quote-unquote a class. They will have access to different cards, different abilities, and everyone kind of pulls from the same amount of resources. The challenge is maximizing the cards that you use with your friends, such as building up your song by playing multiple cards and then ending the kind of quote-unquote riff in order to do damage or gain fans. Whoever fills up the meter at the top first wins the rock off. And I like the visual design. Again, it reminds me of, like a few other games, of this kind of like 90s, like early Nickelodeon era in terms of character designs. The main thing that kind of hurt this game for me is that if you're playing the single player, you have no real control, any real communication with your bandmates, which means that you're kind of left wondering, okay, will they put something together that I can use, or what's going on? And I think the game could do a better job of onboarding in terms of how card combos and so on should be set up. And when I try this one, there is going to be this focus on multiplayer battles, including seasons, and the best multiplayer teams to win will get exclusive cosmetics and things like that, and I don't know how that is going for the game. If you have friends who like deck builders and you're looking for one that you can all play together, I would highly recommend checking out Battle Bands. But if you're in the mood for like a single player focus one, like a Slay the Spire, Monster Train, and so on, I don't know if this game is going to scratch that itch for you, but it is certainly a very interesting take on the deck building roguelike design. So with that said, we're going to wrap up our showcase. I'd like to thank all the games submitted. If you would like me to tailor your game for a future piece, please reach out. You'll find links to everything down below. Do the bell ringing, subscribing, liking YouTube stuff. Check out our Discord and Patreon, and come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where you study the art and science of games.